I thought things would feel lighter after that moment. I believed simply being there was already enough. But something still felt quietly unfinished. I started choosing silence more often. I tried to listen without interrupting. I made space, hoping it would mean something. But nothing really changed. He still kept things to himself. His quiet felt deeper than before. That's when I started questioning myself. Was I too late to understand him? Or had I missed something all along? Sometimes we think one small change is enough. We expect things to shift right away. But for a child, it often begins much slower. My name is Clara. I've been learning to slow down, especially at home. Not everything needs to be fixed right away. That morning, I chose to move differently. I didn't rush into chores like I usually do. I wanted to notice what I often miss. He sat quietly at the table. I moved closer, without saying much. I hoped he would feel it. I watched him carefully, trying not to interrupt. I let the silence stay a little longer. It felt unfamiliar, but important. He kept eating without looking up. No questions, no stories, just small movements. I tried not to read too much into it. I held myself back from asking anything. I didn't want him to feel cornered. Maybe quiet could feel safe too. It felt strange not to reach out immediately. I'm used to solving things quickly. Waiting like this takes more effort than I thought. So this time, I chose to wait. Not because I had the answer, but because I wanted to understand. Maybe he will come when he's ready. That day, I slowed down my routine without forcing anything. I paid more attention to the way he moved around the house. Small details began to feel more noticeable than usual. He wasn't distant in a clear way, but he wasn't coming closer either. It felt like something quiet stood between us. As I cleaned the kitchen, he passed by quietly. There was a time he would say something without thinking. Now, the silence stayed. I tried to start a small conversation. Something simple that used to flow easily. This time, it ended quickly. I began to notice a pattern I couldn't quite name. He wasn't pushing me away, but he wasn't letting me in either. That felt harder to understand than a clear problem. There was nothing obvious to fix. Everything stayed quiet and subtle. I started questioning myself in small, quiet ways. Maybe I missed something without realizing it. Or maybe I just needed more patience. The feeling stayed with me longer than I expected. It didn't overwhelm me, but it quietly grew more present over time. I sit beside him again that afternoon. I try to stay present without rushing anything. I let the moment unfold slowly. I speak softly, choosing simple words. I ask about his day without expecting much. I keep my tone light. He answers briefly, just one word. Then he returns to his own space. The silence comes back quickly. There is no follow-up, no story to hold on to. The moment feels suspended. I stay there, unsure what to do next. I try again, but stop halfway. Something inside me hesitates. I don't want to push too far. The tiredness shows up quietly. Not because of him, but because I feel lost. I realize I don't have a clear way forward. I remind myself that I have been trying. I have made changes, even small ones. But nothing feels different yet. That is when I begin to understand something. Change does not always show itself right away. Especially in a relationship like this. That night, I sat alone in the living room, after everything was done. The house was finally quiet, but my thoughts were not. I let the silence stay without trying to fill it. A thought came quietly, without judgment. Maybe I had been expecting things to change too quickly. Maybe I was looking for signs that were not ready to appear yet. For him, this was not something small. It was about feeling safe again. And safety does not return just because I am ready for it. Feelings shift in ways I cannot always see. What once felt easy may now feel uncertain. And that change needs time to settle again. I cannot make him trust me again by pushing harder. I cannot rush something that grows slowly. What I can do is stay, without pressure. I began to see my own urgency more clearly. I wanted things to go back to how they used to be, but I had not fully accepted where we are now. Trust does not disappear in a single moment, and it does not return all at once either. It moves quietly, in ways that are easy to miss. Maybe this is where it begins again. Not with big moments, but with small ones repeated. Quiet, steady, and almost invisible. I woke up without expecting anything to change today. I just wanted to try again, gently. Not to fix things, but to be there. I sat near him while he played, keeping my distance. I didn't want to interrupt his space, just close enough to be noticed. I watched what he was doing, letting myself follow his pace. There was no need to add anything. Just being present felt enough for now. Sometimes I smiled, even when he didn't look at me. A small response, without expecting one back. Just a quiet signal that I was there. I held back the urge to ask too many questions. I didn't try to open every door. I just made sure the space felt safe. Then something shifted, almost unnoticeable at first. He looked at me a little longer than usual. It wasn't much, but it stayed. There were no words between us, but the silence felt different this time. It didn't feel as distant anymore. I didn't rush to respond or move closer. I let the moment stay as it was. For the first time, I trusted the quiet. I started to see something more clearly. It wasn't about being a perfect mother. It was about being someone he could rely on, again and again. Consistency began to feel more important than effort. Showing up the same way, even on quiet days, mattered more than I thought. Small things slowly built something deeper. I realized I had been chasing visible changes. I wanted signs that things were improving. But what he needed was something less visible and more constant. Trust didn't come from one meaningful talk. It came from moments that felt safe, repeated over time. Moments that didn't demand anything from him. Those moments were easy to overlook. They didn't stand out or feel important at first, but they stayed, quietly shaping something meaningful. I began to loosen my expectations. Not because I gave up, but because I wanted to make space. Space that didn't feel pressured or rushed. Space for him to feel things in his own way. Space for him to decide when to come closer, and space for him to return, without fear. That shift changed how I see everything now. I move a little slower, and notice more. And somehow, things feel more connected than before. I'm starting to accept something quietly. Not every effort shows its result right away, especially when it comes to a child's feelings. I can see I've changed in small ways, but she still watches from a distance. Maybe she needs more time to believe it. I used to think this meant I was failing, but now it feels different. This is just part of the process we both need. I remind myself not to stop halfway, just because nothing looks different yet. Some things are not meant to be rushed. I begin to understand what matters more. Not speed, but consistency. Showing up again and again, even in silence. I no longer wait for her to open up right away. I just stay nearby, so she knows I'm always here. Maybe this is enough for now. It doesn't have to be perfect. What matters is that it's real. I choose to stay in this process, with her, as she is, and without rushing what's still growing. That night, I chose not to fill the silence. I sat beside him a little longer than usual, without expecting anything. Somehow, that felt enough for now. I began to understand something new. Being present doesn't always need words. Sometimes, it just needs space that feels safe. Silence can carry a different kind of comfort. Not empty, but gentle and steady. The kind that doesn't ask anything in return. If you've been trying and nothing seems to change yet, maybe you're not failing. Maybe you're just in the part where things are still growing quietly. I'm Clara, still learning to be patient in small moments like this. This journey doesn't look big from the outside, but inside, it changes everything slowly.